The school bell rang loudly across the playground, and 12-year-old Alex grabbed his backpack from under his desk. While other kids rushed toward the buses or their parents' cars, Alex had different plans today. He reached into his bag and carefully pulled out a homemade birthday card he had been working on all week during art class. The card was nothing fancy, just colored paper and markers, but Alex had put his heart into every line. On the front, he had drawn a picture of a chef's hat and written "Happy Birthday, Dad" in his best handwriting. Inside, he had written a message telling his father how proud he was of him and how much he loved their weekend cooking sessions at home. Alex looked at the card one more time and smiled. His dad always worked so hard, staying late at the restaurant almost every night. Most of the time, Alex only saw him early in the morning before school or on weekends, but today was special. Today was his father's 42nd birthday, and Alex wanted to surprise him at work. He had never actually been inside his dad's restaurant before. Sure, he had driven past it countless times with his mom, and his dad always talked about it at dinner. The restaurant was called the Golden Table, and from what Alex heard, it was one of the fanciest places in the whole city. His dad, David, had started working there as a young man washing dishes, and over the years he had worked his way up until he was able to buy the whole place. Alex's mom always told him how proud she was of his father. "Your dad built something amazing," she would say. "He worked day and night to give us a good life." Alex understood that his family was lucky. They lived in a nice house, he went to a good school, and they never had to worry about money like some of his friends did. But even though his dad owned an important restaurant, at home he was just Dad. He helped Alex with homework, taught him how to ride a bike, and made the best pancakes on Sunday mornings. The restaurant seemed like a different world, a place where his dad wore fancy suits and talked to important people. Today, Alex decided, he wanted to see that world. He wanted to walk into his dad's restaurant and surprise him with the birthday card. He imagined his dad's face lighting up when he saw him. Maybe his dad would even show him around and introduce him to the other workers. Alex walked to the bus stop, but instead of taking the school bus home, he waited for the city bus that would take him downtown. He had saved up his allowance money and had enough for the bus fare both ways. His mom thought he was staying after school for the chess club, which gave him about 2 hours before she would expect him home. As the bus rolled through the city streets, Alex watched the buildings get taller and fancier. The shops changed from regular stores to expensive boutiques with mannequins wearing clothes that probably cost more than his dad spent on groceries in a month. The people walking on the sidewalks looked different too. They wore business suits and carried briefcases, walking quickly like they had very important places to be. Alex felt a little nervous as the bus got closer to downtown. He had been to this part of the city before, but usually with his parents. Being here alone felt strange and exciting at the same time. He checked his backpack again to make sure the birthday card was still safe. When the bus stopped at 5th Street, Alex knew it was time to get off. He remembered his dad saying the restaurant was just 2 blocks from this bus stop. As he walked down the sidewalk, he looked at every building trying to spot the Golden Table. Then he saw it. The restaurant stood on the corner of 5th and Main Street, and it was even more impressive than Alex had imagined. The building was old but beautiful, with large windows and gold letters spelling out the restaurant's name above the entrance. Through the windows, Alex could see people sitting at tables covered with white tablecloths, eating from fancy plates and drinking from crystal glasses. For a moment, Alex just stood on the sidewalk looking at the restaurant. It seemed so elegant and important. He watched well-dressed men and women walking in and out of the front door, and suddenly his school uniform felt very ordinary. His sneakers had scuff marks, his backpack was old, and his hair was a little messy from the windy bus ride. But then Alex remembered why he was there. This was his dad's place. His dad had built this restaurant from nothing, and Alex belonged here just as much as anyone else. He took a deep breath, adjusted his backpack, and walked toward the front door. The entrance had large glass doors with shiny brass handles. As Alex pushed one open, he heard the gentle sound of classical music and quiet conversations. The smell of delicious food filled the air, and everything looked even more beautiful from the inside. The restaurant was bigger than it looked from outside. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over tables set with fine china and silverware. Waiters in black and white uniforms moved smoothly between tables, carrying trays and speaking in low, polite voices. The walls were decorated with expensive-looking paintings, and fresh flowers sat on every table. Alex had never been in such a fancy place before. Even the restaurants his family went to for special occasions were nothing like this. He felt like he had stepped into a movie or a palace. Everything was so clean and perfect, and the people eating looked like they belonged in magazines. As he stood near the entrance, Alex noticed that almost all the customers were adults. There were a few families, but not many children. The kids he did see were dressed much more formally than he was, wearing button-down shirts and dress shoes instead of school uniforms and sneakers. Alex looked around for someone who might be able to help him find his dad. Near the front was a podium where a man in a suit was greeting customers and checking a large book. This must be where people checked in for their dinner reservations. The man at the podium looked very professional and serious. He had gray hair and wore a crisp white shirt with a black tie. Alex watched him for a moment, noting how politely he spoke to the customers and how he seemed to know exactly where everyone should sit. Alex walked slowly toward the podium, his heart beating a little faster with each step. He had practiced what he would say on the bus ride. He would politely explain that he was David's son and ask if someone could let his dad know he was here. It seemed simple enough. But as he got closer, Alex noticed something that made him pause. The man at the podium was looking at him with a confused expression, like he was trying to figure out why a 12-year-old boy in a school uniform was walking around his fancy restaurant. Alex stopped a few feet away from the podium, suddenly, feeling very aware of how different he looked from everyone else in the restaurant, but he remembered his mom's words about being proud of who he was, and his dad's lessons about standing up straight and speaking clearly. He took another deep breath, clutched his backpack strap a little tighter, and prepared to walk up to the podium. Today was his dad's birthday, and nothing was going to stop him from delivering that card. Alex took a few more steps toward the podium, but before he could reach it, a tall waiter appeared in front of him. The man had been clearing a nearby table when he spotted Alex walking through the restaurant. His name tag read Robert, and he had been working at the Golden Table for almost 15 years. Robert looked down at Alex with a frown on his face. He noticed the boy's wrinkled school uniform, his old backpack, and his slightly messy hair. In all his years working at this upscale restaurant, Robert had never seen a child walk in alone looking like this. The customers who brought their children to the Golden Table dressed them in their finest clothes, and they certainly didn't let them wander around unaccompanied. "Excuse me, young man," Robert said in a stern voice that made Alex stop walking. "What are you doing in here?" Alex looked up at the waiter and tried to smile politely, just like his parents had taught him. "Hi, sir. I'm here to see my dad. It's his birthday today, and I wanted to surprise him." Robert's frown deepened. He glanced around the restaurant to see if any customers were watching this unusual situation. The last thing he wanted was for the fancy diners to be disturbed by some kid who had wandered in from the street. "Your father?" Robert asked, his voice filled with doubt. "And who exactly is your father supposed to be?" "His name is David," Alex said proudly. "He works here. I made him a birthday card at school, and I wanted to give it to him." Robert let out a small laugh that wasn't friendly at all. He looked at Alex's clothes again and shook his head. In his mind, there was no way this ordinary-looking boy could be related to anyone important enough to work at the Golden Table. The restaurant employed mostly adults from good families, and their children certainly didn't dress like this boy. "Listen, kid," Robert said, his voice getting louder. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this isn't the place for it. This is a high-class restaurant, not a playground." Alex felt confused by the waiter's reaction. He had expected the man to be helpful, maybe even friendly. Instead, Robert seemed angry that he was there. "I'm not playing a game, sir. I really am looking for my dad. Maybe you could just ask someone if they know David." "David who?" Robert snapped. "Do you have any idea how many people work in this city? You can't just walk into places claiming your father works there." By now, some of the customers at nearby tables had started to notice the conversation. A well-dressed couple stopped eating their soup to watch what was happening. An older woman, dining alone, kept glancing over while pretending to read her menu. The attention made Robert feel even more irritated. "Look," Robert said, stepping closer to Alex and lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. "I don't know what you're trying to pull here, but you need to leave right now. This restaurant is for paying customers only." Alex's heart started beating faster. He didn't understand why the waiter was being so mean to him. All he wanted was to find his dad and give him the birthday card. "But sir, I just need to—" "No buts," Robert interrupted. "I've seen kids like you before trying to sneak into nice places where you don't belong. Well, it's not going to work here." The words hit Alex like a punch to the stomach. Kids like him? What did that mean? Alex looked around the restaurant and noticed something he hadn't paid attention to before. Almost everyone in the dining room looked different from him. Most of the customers were white while Alex and his family were black. Was that what the waiter meant? "I'm not trying to sneak in anywhere," Alex said, his voice starting to shake a little. "I told you my dad works here. His name is David, and today is his birthday." Robert rolled his eyes dramatically. "Sure it is, kid. And I suppose next you'll tell me he's the owner or something ridiculous like that." Alex wanted to explain that his dad actually was the owner, but something about Robert's tone told him the man wouldn't believe him no matter what he said. Instead, he reached into his backpack to pull out the birthday card, thinking that maybe, if Robert saw it, he would understand that Alex was telling the truth. "What are you doing?" Robert demanded, grabbing Alex's wrist as he reached into his bag. "Are you trying to steal something?" "No," Alex said, pulling his arm back. "I was just getting my dad's birthday card to show you." "I don't want to see any card," Robert said loudly enough that more customers turned to look. "I want you out of this restaurant right now." A woman at a corner table whispered something to her husband, who shook his head disapprovingly. Alex couldn't tell if they disapproved of him or of the way Robert was treating him. Either way, he felt embarrassed and confused. "Please, sir," Alex tried one more time. "If you could just tell someone that David's son is here, that's enough." Robert's voice was now loud enough that almost everyone in the restaurant could hear him. "I don't know where you learned to lie so well, but I'm not falling for it. Security is going to escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily." Alex felt tears starting to form in his eyes, but he blinked them back. He had never been treated like this before. At school, at the store, everywhere he went, adults were usually kind to him. They smiled and asked about his grades or complimented his manners. This was the first time an adult had looked at him like he was doing something wrong just by existing. "I don't understand why you won't believe me," Alex said quietly. "I'm not lying about anything." "Because," Robert said, leaning down so his face was closer to Alex's, "kids like you don't have fathers who work in places like this. Now stop wasting my time and get out." The restaurant had grown quieter as more people stopped their conversations to watch what was happening. Some customers looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats and avoiding eye contact. Others seemed curious about the drama unfolding near the entrance. Alex stood there for a moment, not sure what to do. He had come here so excited to surprise his dad, and now this waiter was treating him like he was a criminal. The birthday card was still in his backpack, and he thought about his dad somewhere in this building, probably working hard and not knowing that his son was just a few rooms away being humiliated. The man at the podium, who had been watching the whole scene, finally walked over. "Is there a problem here, Robert?" he asked. "Nothing I can't handle, Mr. Peterson," Robert replied. "Just some kid who wandered in here making up stories. I'm taking care of it." Mr. Peterson looked at Alex with the same doubtful expression Robert had worn. "Young man, this is a very exclusive restaurant. If you're looking for your parents, they're probably at one of the family restaurants down the street." Alex felt his face getting hot with embarrassment and frustration. Why wouldn't anyone believe him? Why did they all assume he didn't belong here? He thought about what his dad always told him about staying calm and being respectful, even when other people weren't being respectful to him. "I understand this is a nice restaurant," Alex said as politely as he could manage. "But my dad really does work here, and I just want to give him his birthday card." Robert threw his hands up in exasperation. This is ridiculous. I'm calling security right now. Alex watched as Robert walked toward the phone at the host station. His heart was pounding, but he tried to remember everything his parents had taught him about staying calm during difficult situations. His mom always said that when people treat you badly, the best thing to do is keep your dignity and speak the truth clearly. Wait, please, Alex called out, his voice steady despite how scared he felt inside. Before you call security, could you just ask if anyone here knows David? That's all I'm asking. Robert stopped and turned around, his face red with frustration. I already told you, kid. Nobody here is going to know your made-up father. But Alex noticed something Robert didn't see. At a table near the window, an older woman in a beautiful blue dress had been listening to the whole conversation. She put down her fork and looked directly at Alex with kind eyes. Then she did something that surprised everyone. Excuse me, the woman said in a clear voice that carried across the restaurant. Did you say your father's name is David? Robert spun around to face the customer, looking annoyed that she was getting involved. Ma'am, please don't encourage him. This boy is just causing trouble. The woman ignored Robert completely and smiled at Alex. What's your name, sweetheart? Alex, he answered, feeling a tiny bit of hope for the first time since he'd walked into the restaurant. Alex, the woman repeated thoughtfully. You know, I've been coming to this restaurant for 3 years and David has mentioned his son Alex many times. He's very proud of you. Robert's mouth fell open. He stared at the woman like she had just spoken in a foreign language. That's impossible, he stammered. Is it? The woman asked, raising an eyebrow. David has shown me pictures of his son on his phone. He talks about how smart Alex is and how well he's doing in school. He mentioned just last week that Alex was working on some kind of art project. Alex's eyes lit up. The birthday card. I made him a birthday card in art class. The woman clapped her hands together. That must be it. David said Alex was making him something special for his birthday. By now, other customers were listening intently. A man at another table leaned over to his wife and whispered, I remember David talking about his son too. Said the boy wants to be a chef someday. Robert looked around the restaurant frantically. He could feel all eyes on him, and for the first time, he started to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Even if this boy knows David somehow, Robert said defensively, that doesn't mean he can just walk in here whenever he wants. There are rules and procedures. What rules? Asked another customer, a businessman in an expensive suit. The rule that says a son can't visit his father at work? Alex felt grateful for these strangers who were standing up for him, but he also felt sorry for Robert. The waiter looked embarrassed and confused, and Alex didn't want to make things worse for anyone. Sir, Alex said politely to Robert, I don't want to cause any trouble. I just wanted to surprise my dad for his birthday. Maybe I should have called first, but I thought it would be more fun to surprise him. Robert's face was getting redder by the minute. He could see that the customers were on Alex's side and he knew he was in a difficult position. But instead of apologizing or trying to fix the situation, he doubled down on his mistake. I don't care what anyone says, Robert declared loudly. This boy doesn't belong here, and I'm going to call security whether you like it or not. The restaurant fell completely silent. Even the soft classical music seemed quieter than before. Alex could feel everyone staring, and he wished he could just disappear. This wasn't how he had imagined his surprise visit would go. You know what? Alex said quietly, looking down at his shoes. Maybe I should just go home. I don't want to ruin everyone's dinner. Absolutely not, said the woman in the blue dress, firmly. You have every right to be here, and you shouldn't leave until you've seen your father. A man sitting with his family stood up from his table. I've never seen anything like this, he said, shaking his head. This young man has been nothing but polite, and you're treating him like he's done something wrong. It's disgraceful, agreed his wife. Alex, honey, don't you dare leave. Your father would want to see you. More customers began speaking up. An elderly gentleman called out, I've eaten here many times, and David always talks about how much he loves his family. This treatment is unacceptable. Robert realized that he was losing control of the situation completely. Nearly every customer in the restaurant was now defending Alex, and some were looking at Robert like he was the problem. He felt cornered and angry, which made him say something he would regret forever. "Fine," Robert shouted, his voice echoing through the restaurant. "You all want to believe this kid's story? Then let's see what happens when I call the real owner and tell him some child is in here pretending to be his son." Alex's eyes widened. He wanted to tell Robert that his dad was the owner, but he could see that the waiter was too upset to listen to anything he said. "You do that," said the woman in blue, crossing her arms. "I think that's an excellent idea." Robert marched over to the phone and dialed a number. Alex watched nervously, his stomach doing flips. In a few minutes his dad would know he was here, but not in the way Alex had planned. Instead of a happy surprise, this was turning into a big mess. While Robert made his phone call, other customers came over to talk to Alex. The woman in blue introduced herself as Mrs. Thompson, and she told Alex that his father had helped her plan her anniversary dinner last month. "Your dad is such a wonderful man," she said kindly. "He spent an hour making sure everything was perfect for my celebration. He even had the chef prepare my husband's favorite dish, even though it wasn't on the menu." Other customers shared their own stories about David. The businessman said David had once stayed late to help him plan a business dinner that led to an important deal. A young couple mentioned how David had made their first date at the restaurant magical by surprising them with a complimentary dessert. As Alex listened to these stories, he felt proud of his father, but also sad about the way Robert had treated him. He wondered if Robert would act differently toward other customers who looked like him, and the thought made him feel heavy inside. Robert finished his phone call and walked back over with a smug expression on his face. "I just spoke to the owner," he announced loudly. "He's coming down here right now to deal with this situation personally." Alex's heart started beating even faster. His dad was coming, and he was probably worried or confused about why someone had called him about a problem in the restaurant. Alex hoped his dad wouldn't be angry with him for causing such a scene. "Good," said Mrs. Thompson. "I think we all want to hear what the owner has to say about this." Robert stood near Alex with his arms crossed, confident that he was about to be proven right. Alex clutched his backpack straps and took deep breaths, trying to prepare himself for what was about to happen. The elevator doors at the back of the restaurant opened with a soft ding. The elevator doors opened slowly and Alex held his breath. He could hear footsteps walking across the restaurant floor, getting closer to where he stood. His hands were shaking a little as he gripped his backpack straps tighter. "What's going on down here?" came a familiar voice that made Alex's heart jump. "Robert, you sounded very upset on the phone." Alex turned around and saw his father walking toward them. David looked exactly like he did every morning when he left for work, wearing a crisp white shirt, dark pants, and the confident smile that made Alex feel safe. But today, instead of relief, Alex felt worried about how his dad would react to this whole situation. Robert stepped forward with a big smile on his face, completely confident that he was about to be proven right. "Mr. David, thank goodness you're here. This boy has been causing problems all evening. He's been telling everyone that he's your son, and some of the customers actually believed him." David stopped walking and looked directly at Alex. For a moment, the entire restaurant was so quiet that Alex could hear his own heartbeat. His father's face went through several different expressions: confusion, recognition, and then something that looked like controlled anger. "Alex?" David said softly, his voice filled with surprise. "What are you doing here, son?" The word son hit Robert like a lightning bolt. His confident smile disappeared instantly, and his face went completely white. He looked back and forth between David and Alex like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Dad," Alex said, running toward his father. "I wanted to surprise you for your birthday. I made you a card at school, and I thought it would be fun to bring it to you at work." David wrapped his arms around Alex in a big hug, and Alex felt all the stress and fear from the past hour melting away. In his father's arms, he felt safe and loved, just like always. "That's so sweet of you," David said, holding Alex tight. "But what happened here? Why does Robert think you were causing problems?" Alex pulled back from the hug and looked up at his father. He didn't want to get Robert in trouble, but he also wanted his dad to understand what had happened. "Well," Alex said carefully, "when I came in, I tried to tell Mr. Robert that I was looking for you, but he didn't believe me. He said kids like me don't belong in places like this." David's expression changed completely. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by something much colder as he turned to look at Robert. The waiter was standing there, with his mouth open, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Is that true, Robert?" David asked, his voice very calm, but somehow scarier than if he had been yelling. Robert stammered and stuttered, trying to find words. Well, you see, the boy looked, I thought." "You thought what exactly?" David asked, taking a step closer to Robert. Mrs. Thompson, who had been watching everything from her table, stood up and walked over. "If I may," she said politely, "I witnessed this entire situation. Your employee treated this young man very poorly. He refused to believe Alex when he said you were his father, and he threatened to call security multiple times." Other customers began speaking, up to the businessman who had defended Alex earlier said, "The waiter was very rude and made assumptions about your son that were completely inappropriate." He grabbed Alex's arm, added the man who had been dining with his family, and he said some very hurtful things. David listened to each customer, his face getting more serious with every word. Alex watched his father and could see that he was trying very hard to stay calm. "Alex," David said gently, "can you tell me exactly what Mr. Robert said to you?" Alex didn't want to repeat the hurtful words, but he knew his father needed to know the truth. "He said that kids like me don't have fathers who work in places like this. And when I tried to show him your birthday card, he thought I was trying to steal something." David closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. "When he won." He opened them again. Alex could see that his father was very, very angry, but trying hard to control it. "Robert," David said quietly, "how long have you worked for me?" 15 years, sir," Robert answered in a shaky voice. 15 years, David repeated. "In all that time, have I ever given you reason to believe that I would tolerate discrimination in my restaurant?" "No, sir," Robert whispered. "Have I not talked about my family countless times? Have I not shown you and other staff members pictures of my wife and son?" Robert's face was now completely red. "Yes, sir, you have." "Then explain to me," David said, his voice getting slightly louder, "how you could look at my 12-year-old son and decide that he didn't belong here." Robert opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked around the restaurant at all the customers who were watching him, and then back at David and Alex. I made a mistake," Robert finally managed to say. "A mistake?" David repeated. "You threatened to have my son arrested. You grabbed him. You humiliated him in front of a room full of people. You want to call that a mistake?" Alex had never seen his father this angry before, even when Alex had accidentally broken his mom's favorite vase or when he had gotten in trouble at school. His dad had never looked like this. "David," Alex said quietly, tugging on his father's sleeve. "It's okay. I'm okay." David looked down at his son and his expression softened immediately. "No, Alex, it's not okay. What happened to you today should never happen to anyone, especially not in my restaurant." He turned back to Robert, who was now shaking. "Robert, in 15 years of working here, you've been a good employee. But what you did today goes against everything this restaurant stands for. How can I trust you to treat my customers with respect when you can't even treat my own son with basic human dignity?" The entire restaurant was watching this confrontation. Some customers were recording with their phones, while others were just staring in shock. Alex noticed that a few people were crying, including Mrs. Thompson. "Please, Mr. David," Robert begged. "I'm sorry, I really am. I don't know what came over me. I've never done anything like this before." "Haven't you?" David asked. "Or have you just never been caught before? How many other customers have you treated this way when I wasn't around to see it?" Robert couldn't answer that question because he knew the truth. This wasn't the first time he had made assumptions about people based on how they looked. He had just never been confronted about it before. David turned to address the entire restaurant. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize to all of you for what you witnessed tonight. This behavior does not represent the values of the Golden Table, and it will not be tolerated." He put his hand on Alex's shoulder and continued, "My son came here tonight to surprise me with a birthday card he made at school. Instead of being welcomed into his father's restaurant, he was insulted and threatened. That ends now." David looked back at Robert one final time. "Clean out your locker, you're fired." The words hung in the air like thunder. Robert's legs seemed to give out a little, and he grabbed onto a nearby chair to steady himself. "Please," Robert whispered. "I have a family. I need this job." David's expression didn't change. "You should have thought about that before you decided that my family didn't belong in my own restaurant." After Robert left the restaurant with his belongings, David stood in the middle of the dining room with his arm around Alex. The entire restaurant was still watching them, and David knew he needed to address what had just happened. "Ladies and gentlemen," David said in a clear voice, "I want to thank those of you who stood up for my son tonight. Your kindness means more to our family than you could ever know." The customers began clapping, and Alex felt his cheeks get warm. He wasn't used to being the center of attention like this, but the applause felt good after such a difficult evening. Mrs. Thompson walked over to them with tears in her eyes. "David, your son showed incredible strength tonight. He stayed polite and dignified even when he was being treated so unfairly. You should be very proud of him." "I am," David said, squeezing Alex's shoulder, "but I'm also heartbroken that he had to go through this at all." Alex looked up at his father and pulled the birthday card out of his backpack. "Dad, I almost forgot. This is why I came here tonight." David took the handmade card and opened it, carefully. As he read the message Alex had written inside, his eyes filled with tears. The card was simple, but it was full of love and pride for his father's accomplishments. "This is the best birthday gift I've ever received," David said, hugging Alex again. "Thank you for being so brave tonight." "I wasn't that brave," Alex said quietly. "I was really scared." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," David explained. "It means you do the right thing even when you are scared, and that's exactly what you did." David turned to address his staff members who had been watching from the kitchen doorway. "Everyone, I want you to meet my son Alex. He's the reason I work so hard every day." The kitchen staff came out to meet Alex, and they were all warm and friendly. The head chef, a woman named Carmen, shook Alex's hand and said, "Your father talks about you all the time. He's so proud of your cooking experiments at home." "You like to cook?" asked one of the younger waiters. "I love it," Alex said, smiling, for the first time since he'd arrived at the restaurant. "My dad teaches me new things every weekend." David watched his son talking with the staff and felt a mix of pride and sadness. He was proud of how Alex had handled himself, but he was also sad that his son had to learn such a hard lesson about how some people in the world would treat him. "Alex," David said, "how about I give you a tour of the kitchen? Then we can go home and celebrate my birthday with Mom." As they walked toward the kitchen, Mrs. Thompson called out to them, "David, wait a moment, please." They turned around, and Mrs. Thompson was standing with several other customers who had witnessed the evening's events. "We've been talking," she said, "and we think what happened tonight is bigger than just one employee's behavior. This young man faced discrimination, and while you handled it perfectly, we think there's more that could be done." David raised a new eyebrow. "What do you mean?" A businessman stepped forward. "Some of us here tonight work for companies that deal with diversity training and education. We'd like to offer our services to help train your staff about unconscious bias and how to treat all customers with respect." "That's very generous," David said thoughtfully. "It's not just about being generous," added another customer. "It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else's child." Alex listened to the adults talking and felt amazed that something so terrible could lead to people wanting to make positive changes. Over the next few weeks, David worked with these customers to set up training sessions for all his employees. He also created new policies for the restaurant that made it clear that discrimination of any kind would not be tolerated. But the changes went beyond just the golden table. Mrs. Thompson, who turned out to be a retired teacher, started working with David to create a program that would help other restaurants in the city understand the importance of treating all customers fairly. The businessman, whose name was Mr. Rodriguez, helped David connect with other restaurant owners who wanted to improve their staff training. Soon, restaurants all over the city were implementing similar programs. Alex became involved too, though he didn't realize it at first. David started bringing him to the restaurant more often, and Alex would help in the kitchen during weekends. The staff members got to know him as a regular person, not just the boss's son, and they all grew to love his enthusiasm for cooking. One Saturday, about a month after the incident, Alex was helping Carmen prepare vegetables when a new customer came in. The customer was a young black girl about Alex's age, and she seemed nervous about being in such a fancy restaurant. Alex watched as the new waiter, a young man named Tony who had been hired to replace Robert, greeted the girl and her grandmother with a big smile. He helped them find the perfect table and made sure they felt welcome. "It's different now, isn't it?" Alex said to Carmen as they watched. "Very different," Carmen agreed. "Your father made sure of that." The training sessions had taught the staff about unconscious bias and how their assumptions could hurt people. They learned to treat every customer with the same respect, regardless of how they looked or dressed. David also made another important change. He put up a sign near the front door that read, "The Golden Table welcomes everyone. We believe that respect and kindness should be the foundation of every interaction." But perhaps the most meaningful change was the scholarship program David created. He partnered with local schools to provide opportunities for kids from all backgrounds to learn about the restaurant business. Some students came for field trips, others participated in cooking classes, and a few even got part-time jobs when they were old enough. Alex helped design the program, and he loved meeting the other kids who shared his passion for cooking. The restaurant became a place where young people could learn not just about food, but about treating others with dignity and respect. 6 months later, Alex was back at the Golden Table for another special occasion. This time, it was a celebration dinner for his good grades. As they sat at their favorite table, Alex looked around the busy restaurant. "Dad," he said, "do you ever think about what would have happened if Robert had just listened to me that first night?" David considered the question carefully. "I think about it sometimes, but you know what? I'm grateful for what happened in a strange way." "Grateful?" Alex asked, surprised. "Yes," David explained, "because it opened my eyes to problems I didn't know existed in my own restaurant, and it led to changes that have made this place better for everyone." Alex nodded, understanding what his father meant. "And it taught me that standing up for yourself is important, even when it's scary." "Especially when it's scary," David agreed. As they ate their dinner, Alex noticed the same young girl who had come in with her grandmother a few weeks earlier. This time she was there with her whole family, and they all looked comfortable and happy. Tony, the waiter, was taking excellent care of them, making sure they understood the menu and suggesting dishes they might enjoy. The girl caught Alex's eye and waved, and he waved back with a big smile. "You know what the best part is?" Alex said to his father. "What's that?" "Now other kids won't have to go through what I went through. They'll be welcomed here from the very beginning." David smiled and raised his glass of water in a toast. "To making the world a little bit better, one person at a time." Alex clinked his glass against his father's. "And to the best dad in the world, who taught me that doing the right thing is always worth it." That night, as they drove home together, Alex felt proud of his father and proud of himself. What had started as a simple birthday surprise had turned into something much bigger. A reminder that everyone deserves to be treated with respect and kindness no matter who they are or what they look like.